Today, we're ranking every single Fortnite LTM from worst to best. Starting off at the very bottom, we have Impossible Escape. Probably the worst and most forgettable LTM in history, and that's for a very good reason. All you did was seek out parts for a helicopter and escape, and not much else. The only positive I can give this mode is that it did have its own unique umbrella for winning. Next up, we have Slide. This is an obvious pick to be this far down on the list, because there's almost nothing worse than having to fight and move your character with constant ice on your feet. And combined with the infinite use grappler you get, just made moving around out of your control, and sometimes you would just fall to your death. Overall, a pretty terrible mode. At our next spot, we have Splashdown. This mode was introduced and was exclusive to the 14 Days of Summer back in 2019. And need I say any more, if you were there, this was just a boring LTM. All you did was throw water balloons at people to deal damage, and there was no real gimmick or any sort of fun, tense moments. Each fight just felt super anticlimactic, and overall, it just wasn't very fun. Next up, we got Royale. This is the LTM that was not in the last man standing format, and the first player or team to reach a set number of points would instantly win. To collect points, you can pick up coins or get kills. It sounds cool on paper, but in execution, it just wasn't very fun. It was tolerable, but not very memorable. At our number 47 spot, we have Headshots Only. This mode is exactly what it sounds like. Body shots did 0 damage and only headshots counted. The reason why this is so far down is that the minigun and hoverboard killed the game mode's potential in my opinion. Moving on the list, we have Love Shot. This is pretty much Sniper Shootout but with crossbows instead. And honestly, it's just not very memorable. Skybases just straight up dominated the meta in this mode and ruined it completely as crossbows can't damage builds. Moving on, let's talk about Sword Fight. This mode was just like normal BR, but with swords. But what made this phone not as fun as it could have been, and honestly should have been, is that the sword got heavy nerfed, making it almost unusable in most situations. I know the sword pre-nerf was, well, sing! OP, to say the least, but this version of the sword was just borderline useless. Next up, we have our first Team Deathmatch LTM, but arguably the worst one, Team Terror. This is pretty much Team Rumble, but with zombies, which in my opinion added really nothing to the mode and just made it more annoying, if anything, as zombies would just constantly get in your way. At our number 43 spot, we have a pretty OG LTM, all things considered, here, that being Bare Bones. This mode acted the same as normal BR, but just removed most of your UI except your health and your hotbar. This mode was just okay, not much to it, but it did add a unique gimmick to it as you needed to be better with your comms with your teammates. As you couldn't say things like north or west, you had to be more specific, like, hey, over there at Trump Tower, or something like that. And since you couldn't see the map, you had to be ready for storm at any given moment. But that's really all it has going for it. Next up, we have a pretty obscure mode, that being the Flow Restores. How this mode would work is that if you stood on the actual surface of the map, you would heal. This did add a unique gimmick to normal games, as it meant that you would benefit as much if not more so to not build up and take high ground. But overall, this mode just didn't do too much to make it stand out. At the 41st spot, we have Wild West. I mean, it's pretty much just cowboy related items like the 6-shooter, which was a pretty awful item all things considered. But then you got weapons like the hunting rifle and the pump shotgun. It wasn't too unique, but the addition of the hunting rifle and the pump made this mode a lot more bearable than the ones I've listed so far. Next up, we have Rally Royale at our 40th spot. This is definitely one of the more unique LTMs we've ever had, that being it really wasn't BR, it was more of a race mode, but the most fun aspect of this mode was the fact that other cards and players could shoot at you to slow you down. Yet, that aspect added a fun PvP gimmick to this mode. I have a lot of fond memories of this mode for sure. Next up, we have Disco Domination. This is one of the more ridiculous modes we've ever gotten because in order to get points for your team, you had to dance at these like stages to build up a meter. It was fun, but in a goofy, relaxed way. It wasn't too action-packed, so it was kind of slow, but it for sure had its moments where it was fun to boot up for like a game or two, but that's about it. At the number 38 spot, we have Pickaxe Frenzy. As the name implies, it was only pickaxes and rusty cans for your only ranged option, and movement items like the Rift to Go and Impulse Nades, and the fact you could only heal if you emote, and you could only hold one build of each material at a time. This in my opinion is pretty fun but slow mode. Not much would happen until the late game, and that's where most of the fun came out of this mode. Let's speedrun a couple of modes that are pretty much the same thing, that being teams of 33, final fight, and teams of 20. All of these modes acted in the same way, but the teams were slightly different in numbers. Not much to say here, just your typical team matches, but I will say the teams of 20 mode was my favorite. Moving on, we have ground game at number 34. This game mode was pretty much the first look at zero build if you really look at it, because in this mode you could only hold 30 wood, 20 brick, and 10 metal, meaning you couldn't build much before you ran out. I actually didn't mind this mode when it was out because it prevented spam building and resulted in more fighting than building. At our number 33rd spot, we have the very first LTM to ever be added into Fortnite, that being 50v50. It's pretty much teams of 20 or final fight, but just better overall. However, I can't rank it that high because just like teams of 20 and the others, is that it has a very slow start, but a very fun endgame. However, this is better because in my opinion, this is the best player division you can do for these kind of modes, that being half and half. Also, we will never forget the defaults that were always there to revive us when we were knocked down. At the 32nd spot is Day of Doom. This is the most recent LTM we got, and in my opinion, it's just endgame but inferior in every way. That being said, I still enjoyed it a lot, it was still something. It was a nice change of pace and everything, but I really wish there was more unique mythics for the hero and villain side. Moving on, we got a pretty unknown one, that being Tank Battle. How this mode would work is that everyone would have more health, deal more damage, and the only way you could heal is to kill other players, and they gain shield back, and you would gain 1 shield per second and would siphon other players' shield by damaging them. This is a concept I really hope they use again, because it encourages more fighting rather than camping. And honestly, it's just a more fun version of normal solos. Next up, we got Sneaky Silencers. This mode was pretty much stealth only items like suppress guns and smoke bomb, but the unique gimmick it has no shotguns at all. Also, things like the decoy bomb and flare gun made this mode a lot more fun to me than most others would, but in my opinion, this mode was great. However, soaring solos is easily one of the best solo modes we've ever had. It's pretty much solos, but you can glide or redeploy at any time, which added a ton of free mobility and pretty much ruled out dying to fall damage, because let's face it, dying to fall damage is never fun. Now let's talk about a better 50v50. Well, I'm talking of course, solid gold 50v50. This is just 50v50, but better in every way in my opinion. Not much else to say, it's just better because everyone had the best loot you can get, and it works just like normal 50v50 did. Moving on the list, let's talk about the best 14 Days of Summer exclusive mode, Tag. This mode was so fun because it acted just like its name implied. It was simply tag, but instead of normal tag, once you hit someone, they would go onto the tag team. It honestly functions more like an infection mode than a tag mode, but it's still good regardless. Next up, we got Bounty. Before I get into this one, I'm also considering Wix Bounty in the same boat, because they function almost the same. This mode is Royale, but it feels actually good, because unlike Royale, the players with the most tokens were marked on the map. This was just a small, insignificant change, but it affected the entire gameplay to make it a lot more intense, and I loved it. But going on, we have a change of pace at my 25th spot. We have Playground mode. Because this isn't your typical LTM, and in fact, it stayed permanent for a long time and was ultimately removed due to creative and battle labs being superior in every way. But this mode added such a game changer to the skill gap because it was pretty much just a testing ground for players to do whatever they wanted in a 1 hour time span. I still remember the days where me and my friends were goofing around doing random stuff the entire time, and once that storm comes in, we were all fighting for our lives to see who the last player would be. Honestly, just a lot of fun times overall. Soaring 50s is the best version of 50v50 and it's not even close. I don't think I even need to say why, as you could probably figure it out, as it has the same reasoning as Soaring Solos. Next in the list we have Power Up. This is a mode that didn't stay for that long and hasn't returned since. How this mode would essentially work is that for a set amount of time when the match started, your shield cap was unlimited, and you could increase that by drinking as many shields as you could before the timer ran out. It was pretty much a juggernaut mode, and I really liked it. Here's where we get a bit controversial at our 22nd spot. I'm putting Food Fight. A lot of people might really love this mode, and some people even put this in their top 10. And I can somewhat understand why. When you think of LTMs, this is probably one of the first that pops into your head. I will say this though, this is the best non-collab team mode ever added in my opinion, but it just doesn't compete with the other modes ahead of this. So this is where I'm going to put it. This is one of the oldest LTMs we have gotten, that being High Explosives. And it is the definition of scuffed, but in a good way. This mode was just pure chaos in the late game, and I loved it. Also, this was the place where all noobs ran to when pubs got a little too sweaty. Next up, we have Tilted Taxis. Unlike High Explosives, this was a little bit more recent, and I really enjoyed this one. It's pretty much like an Uber taxi simulator, but you have competition with the other players. All I can say is if you know, you know. At our number 19 spot is Fly Explosives, which is just like High Explosives but added jetpacks. Pretty much High Explosives but somehow even more scuffed, and it was awesome. At the number 18 spot, we got a classic, that being Unvolted. The reason I put this so high up is because, well, its loophole is all weapons that were currently volted, and that was it, which made for an unbalanced but fun as hell loophole. Also, this mode was god tier if you were playing in squads. Now we're getting into the modes that I have almost no issues with, starting off with Steady Storm. This one a lot of people might not even remember. How it worked is that when the storm started moving, it never stopped moving. So that means there was no storm circles or any indication of where the storm was finally going to close. I love this mode because you had to constantly be on the move, and it pretty much removed the idea of camping. This is a seasonal LTM, that being Horde Rush. Yeah, not much to say. I think my only small complaint is that it lacked some sort of replayability, but that's really it for me. I love this mode in every other way, and I had a lot of fun playing this with my friends. Also, if this mode was just a tad bit harder, it would be in the top 10 easily. We are now in our top 15, and we're starting off with Catch. This is a classic casual mode. It's pretty hard to die early or even mid-game to be honest, but once it hits endgame and there's just stuff flying everywhere, like all around you, that's where it starts to get really fun and intense. This is one of the only few modes where it's casual but intense at the same time. At number 14, we got Comeback. I can guarantee most people watching this video have no clue what this mode even is. Basically, you started off with all gray weapons, and each time you die, you come back with loot a tier higher than what you had. And since this mode also had siphon, it just added such an aggressive playstyle, and I really missed this type of format. It was simply just really fun. At number 13, we have Endgame. A lot of people might be surprised that this isn't top 10 at the very least, but please understand I had to rank 51 different modes, so it was extremely difficult to choose where to put this. But all I can say is, this wasn't as cool this time as it was the first time. Also, it was damn near impossible for the heroes to win, but this mode is better than Day of Doom in every way, I will admit that. Next up, we got Close Encounters. I personally loved the close range idea and removing all elements of holding high and long distance shooting. And removing all elements of holding high and long distance shooting was such a nice change of pace from what BR is. Also, jetpacks are a nice little bonus. Here's probably the most recognizable game mode, like, ever. That being, of course, Solid Gold. This is just solos but better in every way, because you don't have to rely on RNG as much, if at all, because you and whoever you're fighting is almost always going to have the same loophole and even playing field. At our number 10 spot, we have Sniper Shootout, the inferior version to One Shot. That doesn't mean I hate it, but I gotta rank these somehow. I loved sniping and still do to this day. This is a mode that was pretty much perfect for someone like me. I just kinda wish that the scope weapons like the thermal AR wasn't in the loophole. Next up, we got Blitz. This is just a better version of Steady Storm. The only difference is that the storm moves a lot faster, but there are storm circles. So you pretty much always have to keep moving. It's just a lot faster paced than normal solos or squads. At our number 8 spot, we have Arsenal. I'm a sucker for maps like Gun Game and those sorts of modes where you have to switch out your gun each time you get a kill, and this captures it in a BR format and I loved it. This is one of the few modes I actually really hope come back one day. Moving on, we have Storm King. This is easily one of the most unique LTMs we have ever gotten, if not the most unique, as it was pretty much just a boss fight game mode. The thing I loved about this mode is that it was actually hard. Like, you could die even if you play well. And you have to actually help your team to increase your odds of winning. Beating the solo is possible, but it takes ages and is super difficult. Also, the umbrella it gave for winning is pretty sick, no lie. This is a bit controversial, but I'm putting Siphon at number 6. I think Siphon is one of the best things to ever be added to Fortnite, only for it to be taken away not long after. So when this mode came out, it's really all I played to be honest. Overall, great memories. Next up, we have the Getaway. This mode is probably one of the first I ever played, as I started mid Chapter 1 Season 4. This mode has probably the best idea for a game mode I've ever seen. The whole jewel to getting it to the van aspect is honestly so fun, not much else to say. At our number 4 spot, we have One Shot, aka the better version of Sniper Shootout. Also, the low grav One Shot is arguably the most fun I've ever had played in this game, period. Now that we're in the top 3, these could honestly go either way, but I'm putting the Infinity Gauntlet at number 3. Because this is one of the few modes that I have actually never played myself. But I do have a close friend who did play it and he helped me making this ranking, so thank you if you're watching. From what I know, Thanos was probably the scariest thing you could encounter in Fortnite during that time, and he was actually kind of bad, to be honest. But it was simply solos, but in the best way possible. Easily deserving of top 3 in my opinion. Unlike that mode, I did actually play this one, that being Air Royale. This mode is probably one of the best parts of Season 8 in my opinion, apart from the event and the #1 spot. If there is one mode that deserves its #1 spot, it would be Fuller's Lava in my opinion. Just so much hype and it being so much different from the others, and the pure concept of it, I have very fond memories of this mode, and that's why it's #1 on this list. What do you guys think of this list? Let me know in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe for more content.